Hello pirates, welcome to part 3 of my base clinic series that I've been recording and releasing after Kixeye updated the game with their new rules of engagement for base hitting and base defending. This part 3 will be about defenders. What has changed in them, which ones have or have not changed, as well as one build for each defender, with either builds I've used before or that I've seen people using before, and some highlights. It's not a deep dive on each hull because that will take forever, and I want to keep this short and to the point. Let's start with the Lurker. The screenshots you see on the left, I took screenshots of every single defender before the changes were implemented on Tuesday, the 10.21 update. And then I took screenshots on the right after the changes were made. This way I could compare side by side all detailed stats and confirm that no changes had been made. So at least on the visible statistics for the hull, they're identical. So the way you used before, you can use it now. This is a submarine that never comes up for air. It stays down for the whole battle. And it's really good with concussive. There are two weapons for it. Either you can use the torpedo or the piranha depth charge. I personally prefer the torpedo, so let's look at a build with it. This build is set up for as much damage as we can take out of it. You could actually say you could remove the hydroatomizer nozzle and put another concussive upgrade for even more damage, but slower reload. This build, despite having the concussive force, it loses a little bit of range, so it goes from 160 to 145. And each torpedo here, each projectile will do 79,000 damage, which is not enough to overcome the deflection of most modern conquerors. But on crit hits, and there is one special here that gives a 20% chance of a crit hit, then it deals 158k. In that case, it actually hurts a little bit, at least most, and it hurts the trencher in particular a lot. Once you upgrade, you can actually get even more damage from the torpedoes. It's not my favorite defender, but it's an option. It still works to an extent. And you can put, after you upgrade, you can put a tactical module. I recommend either the engine disruptor to slow down attackers, but it's very heavy, or the tactical focus that adds 5% damage to its own torpedoes and to any friendly ships in a 60 radius. So you can actually buff up other ships nearby. Remember, because it's torpedo based, it has to have a clear, straight path to incoming attackers. It cannot have land in between them, otherwise it won't fire. It cannot be in a corner, otherwise it won't fire. And it cannot be behind a gate, otherwise it won't fire. Oil rigs and stuff like that on its way, it's not a problem. The second defender, the Carnage. Again, the two screenshots from before 10.21 and after update 10.21, no changes at all. The Carnage has an interesting mechanic. It's the only defender that moves, and you cannot control it. It just moves and chases the attacker. It starts the battle as a really weak ship in terms of damage and defense. It's weak. But as time progresses, it gains deflections and it gains a lot of damage. And that hasn't changed. The only thing I recommend is you do the upgrade, so you get even more combat speed to track the attackers, and you gain some armor. It's not overall effective against warhounds, but it could be effective against slow attackers such as basilisks. By the time they kill the last gate, the Carnage will probably be very strong, and it's just going to charge right at them and it's going to kill them pretty fast. Let's take a look at a build. You can do a build with cannons or throwers. I prefer the thrower build because of the range, and the damage it does is pretty decent. After, like towards the end of the battle, not at the beginning. So here's a build with the throwers. It's the Ember Storm Thrower. With this special here, it has an extra range of like 98 or 99, something like that. So it matches the other attackers, at least the warhounds. There are specials for reload, specials for damage. And I'm leaving the armors blank because that changes every month, every 2 months when Kixeye releases a new Conqueror or a new turret, changes the balance you need, so you gotta change the armor. But in this case, you might want to consider the D6 STSL or D6TA simply because they add a lot of armor and you want this hull to survive for as long as possible. The other thing I'm adding here is this is an explosive special, but I'm putting it here for the projectile speed and the huge splash bonus it gives. Place it behind gate so it doesn't charge at the beginning of the battle, and you can pair it up with a Houndmaster. The Houndmaster will make sure it doesn't move, even if there are no gates in between, but it doesn't move at all, and it gives it some extra buffs. So it's usually used with a Houndmaster, not alone, although it can. I don't know if I mentioned, but for each build I'm sharing here, for each ship, there is one build code in the video description. You can just go in there, copy and paste in your shipyard, and you're going to see the same build I'm showing here. Then you just gotta add the armor or any missing components. Next up, the Houndmaster. That's the one usually, it can go with the Carnages, but it can also go alone. There were no changes before and after the update. It's still the same. It still doubles the range of any weapons. It has a self-range modifier. Any weapons you put on it will have twice the range. There are many ways you can take advantage of that, mostly tactically, not in terms of damage done. It also has these 2 Carnage related auras, like I said. For the first half of the battle, it takes the combat speed of the Carnage down to 0, and it gives a lot of deflection so they survive longer. And then for the second half of the battle, to be more precise, after 2 minutes and a half, because you may have a 6-minute battle, but it's always going to be after 2 minutes and a half, it releases the Carnage, gives them extra combat and turn speed, reduces the spread, which is good for the thrower build again, and increases accuracy, which only matters if you're doing the cannon ship. But anyways, let's look at a build for the Houndmaster. Forget about the Carnage for now. Let's just look at the Houndmaster. The weapon that was released with it, it's called Gatekeeper. Do not confuse with the Gatekeeper Defender. I think Kixeye is running out of names. And so this mortar is weak overall against most ships, but it's pretty much there to try and hit the basilisks when they are at the rim. And with 80,000 damage per projectile, it can damage basilisks, but not much else. It might damage howlers if they sit still long enough, and not much else. So you can put, this build uses 2 of them just to hit stuff at the rim. And then it uses 1 Polonium Thrower, which is a tactical choice. It's going to double the range. And this one, when it hits the enemy with splash, it reduces their accuracy by 50%, making it a lot harder for attackers to kill your guard. And it has 1 D104N. These 2 are very old weapons. This one reduces the enemy's reload and speed by 30% for a few seconds. So you see I put 1 of each, and I put the 2 mortars, and all the specials are explosive related pretty much, to maximize damage, to give it some reload, more splash, which helps the thrower as well, and projectile speed, since the mortars tend to be very slow. Again, build code for this is in the video description. Just add the missing armors based on what you need to defend against. Next up, the Gorgons. There have been no changes on the Gorgons as well. Same characteristics. The most important thing on the Gorgon is the little aura it has that freezes the enemy in place for as long as the Gorgon is alive. Because you want to keep the Gorgon alive so it keeps one enemy ship in place, you want to upgrade it to U1 so you get the extra armor. A build for the Gorgon, again, it's there primarily for the freeze ability, but the standard build would be with missiles. People also build them with countermeasures because the Gorgon has a generic accuracy bonus of 40% that helps countermeasures too. Some people are building them with launchers and throwers, just like I was showing the Houndmaster. But the build I'm talking about here is missile based. I prefer the Ophidian missile. There are 6 of them here. They do less damage than the Medusa, but they don't have a minimum range, so they don't have a blind spot. and it has much higher accuracy against high evade enemies. I put one Medusa so you can compare, but you feel free when you paste this code on your shipyard to remove the Medusa, go all Ophidian. Some people go all Medusa, it's their choice. I also put one D55M just so you know. It gives a small slow effect on the enemies when it hits, up to 20% slower. And because it's not a field, it's not affected by tactical field resistance. It's a stack. So unless the attacker is unreactive, you will achieve the full minus 20%, no matter whether they have tactical field resistance or not, because it's not a tactical field. Again, this one's maximized for damage. I mean, 3 specials here are damage related. 1 gives range. Some people, instead of going all damage, they put something for anti-stun, like Agility System 4. You can do that, or you can just place it near an anti-rocket turret. Up to you. The Gatekeeper, I think that's the one everyone was talking about, because while all other tier 8 defenders were not changed, this one changed a lot. Not in the base stats, the attack, the defense, the move, the stealth is all the same, but the aura was nerfed big time, because in the new mechanics, if Kixeye left the Gatekeeper as it was released, it was just going to be so overpowered with 3 of them on the base that attackers would not stand a chance. I doubted that at first, but seeing how things are working, it kind of makes sense. It pissed me off, but it kind of makes sense, and you know. So looking at the aura now, the range has been reduced from 60 to 45. Number of targets, number of buildings it heals from 4 to 2. The speed at which it transfers the health went from 0.2 seconds to 0.4, so it's twice as low in healing. It heals the same amount, the 2 million armor points, but it only starts healing now when the building is below 50% health. Before it was at 85. So it's a lot less effective, but it still delays the attacker when used right. And you gotta rely on the turrets and the other defenders and the length of your channel and stuff like that, because now the attackers can't prepare your base. It's one hit, so it still kind of works. In terms of a build, first of all, use the Deadbolt Scatterguns. Forget about the Torpedo or the Death Charge, the Piranha. They are not effective. Use the Scatterguns that came with it. And then, you know, put 1 concussive deflection armor and the other 2 to be defined. I mean, most people I see either go no armor or they focus on concussive deflection for now, because usually it's the Warhounds killing the Gatekeepers. The specials 1 and 2, which I'm sharing here, are the same in every Gatekeeper I've seen. They are the ones that give corrosive buffs: reload, multi-shot, damage, you know, less spread, more splash. These 2 specials, and if you copy the build code, these are the 2 specials you're going to see. You're going to see exactly what you see here in the picture. The other 2 specials I'm leaving blank intentionally, not because I'm trying to hide something, but because they vary. Like, I have 3 ships, 3 Gatekeepers, and none of them have the same 2 specials here at the bottom. They're all different. I see Gatekeepers from other players, they're different. So usually, special number 3, you use to control cloak time, like a Nautilus battery, a Mimicus system, or something like that. Or you just leave the cloak time at 40 seconds and then you put a damage special, like the assault battery, or the corrosive upgrade, or the corrosive force, or the corrosive scope. And then the 4th special is a big wild card. Just pick anything. If you want to buff reload, which is very slow on this weapon, pick something for reload. There's one, CTCO, it's very heavy though. You can get more stuff for splash, for spread, for projectile speed. You can use like a self-concussive scope for extra range, or corrosive force for more damage, or corrosive upgrades. Up to you. If you have 3, I suggest you have them at different cloak times. So probably one of them you don't put a cloak time special. The other 2 you put different specials to get different times. I hope this was helpful. And next up, you can watch part 1, the overall rule changes. You can watch part 2, where I'm talking about tactical modules and mountains. And you can watch this video about finding base power, because that's very constrained right now. See you next time, pirates.